Why are AI agents any different or better than traditional SaaS software?
60+% of SaaS businesses are going to be AI agents.
Is it then replacing it or enhancing it?
How much context can they intake? How do you, if you're using multiple different agents, how do you make sure that the second agent
Where in the world can I actually apply it in my company in the first place?
knows what the first agent?
Welcome to our AI Unplugged Without Borders video podcast series, part of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. Today's topic is about AI agents. Now, at a recent Microsoft event in Mountain View, I was captivated by a presentation on efficiently developing AI agents. Derek Osgood, the presenter, is a former product and marketing exec, turning founder and building the startup company called DoubleO based in San Francisco, a software platform that makes it ridiculously simple for non-developers to automate complex workflows using teams of AI agents, tackling everything from recruiting to content creation to CRM management. Prior to founding DoubleO, he spent 4 years building an award-winning AI product management platform called Ignition, where much of the expertise in AI agents that eventually became DoubleO was formed. In earlier lives, he was an early hire at Rippling, where he stood up the product marketing function and helped scale the company to $20 million in ARR. As a product leader, everywhere from startups to major brands like PlayStation, Derek has launched over 100 products, and today he is building the platform, according to him, he wishes he had along the way. I'm your host, Thomas Neubert, born and raised in Germany, a longtime entrepreneur and corporate executive, living in Silicon Valley for over 34 years, and the founder of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. So let's get to it. Hi, Derek. Good to see you again. I just saw you pitching your company about AI agents at a recent Microsoft event here in Mountain View, Silicon Valley. And I thought it would be absolutely awesome to have you on our podcast, the AI Unplugged Without Borders, because the topic is definitely on everybody's mind right now. And not only your offering seems to be very intriguing, but also the timing of it is just absolutely perfect. So thank you very much for joining and sharing your wisdom and your excitement to our Transatlantic AI Exchange audience. So with that in mind, let me maybe just jump into the very first question, and that is, the AI agents is a term that gets thrown around quite a bit these days in different ways. Why don't you explain the audience what actually is an AI agent?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me, Thomas. I'm excited to chat through this. I think, agents are a topic that, everybody that's like been building an AI for a while now has like been talking about for the last like 6 months pretty aggressively. And I think, it's starting to become a little bit more kind of like in the public consciousness. And so it's an interesting subject though, because it's, I think everybody has a very, very different understanding of like what an AI agent is. And I think everybody kind of like generally understands that AI agents are, AI that's like meant to do stuff for you. But I think when you talk about different contexts that can be used in, some people think about, AI agents as like intelligent chatbots that are contextualized and loaded up with some knowledge about, you or your company and their idea, like specific types of questions. Some people think about AI agents more through the lens of like the browser agents that like OpenAI just was talking about with Operator, where, it's like an AI LLM operating a browser. And then think about AI agents as the like most granular level of what an AI agent is, which is, function calls for, within code where you're using an LLM to actually make function calls into Python code. And so like the reality is like all of those are technically correct. The way I always describe AI agents is really they are autonomous software entities that are able to reason or like interpret data, make decisions based on that data, and then actually take action. And the most important part of that is that they're able to take action, and they do that through function calling. So whether they're, operating a browser or or working as a chat agent. Ultimately, what they're doing is they're going and accessing some data via function calls and then taking action, via some integration or API. And they're basically, able, it's if you were to take an LLM and kind of like treat the LLM as like the brain, where it can kind of figure out what to do and what information is needed to do that. And then you're giving it like hands and feet and allowing it to take action via giving it access to the ability to like make function calls in code. So ultimately, it's basically just like taking LLMs one step further and making it so that they're not just like intaking information and giving you an answer. They're intaking information, potentially going and collecting additional information from other external sources, and then they're doing something with it as opposed to just kind of like giving you a response.
Okay. So maybe two follow-up questions on that one. The first one is, what kind of knowledge expertise does a person actually have to develop an AI agent? And then the follow-on question is, what kind of maybe one or two, very specific use cases you can share that people who are not that familiar with AI and certainly not with AI agents can kind of visualize in a practical sense what that is?
Yeah, the knowledge and skills question is an interesting one because it kind of depends on the complexity of the agent that you want to build, right? So like building a ultra simple single action agent that, for example, let's say you wanted to build an agent that all it does is take text input, translate it, and then update a database with it, right? Like that's a very simple process where all you're doing is you have a simple prompt for an LLM to intake some data and then translate it. And then you have one function call, which is a very specific one, which is go update this database, with this new translated data.
Yeah.
Like it's still not easy for a non-developer to build because ultimately you would still need to like understand kind of prompt engineering for how to describe the thing that you want the LLM to do. And then you would need to be able to give the agent, a basic Python function to be able to go call the database. But, there's a bunch of tools for doing those kind of like simple agents. Then you start getting into like more complex ones. If you want to start building chatbots, there's some tools for doing that. If you want to start building like workflows and stringing agents together or giving them a lot more like freedom to decide what to do and giving them the ability to take multiple different types of actions, which is when you start getting into kind of the space where agents are able to operate a lot more like an intelligent assistant or employee, because they're able to like do many things and decide what thing makes the most sense to do based on the context of the, situation that they're in. That's a lot harder. And ultimately, like the primary skill set there is you need to really understand how the underlying kind of mechanisms around LLMs work. And so there's a lot of like limitations with LLMs right now around how much context can they intake? How do you, if you're using multiple different agents, how do you make sure that like the second agent knows what the first agent has done and has the same context that the first agent is doing? There's also limitations around, what LLMs are actually like how they form the function calls to be able to take the actions. So you really need to understand kind of like the underlying infrastructure. And then you also need to understand how to, give good direction to LLMs, which like is a lot closer to like giving direction to a person. But you need to be able to give really detailed, specific guidelines for that LLM to operate within, and do effective prompt engineering to get them to actually reason through the problem correctly. All of this stuff is super hard. So like it's not an easy thing to go build an agent. It's very easy to go from like zero to a demoable version and give somebody a kind of like proof of concept where you can say, hey, like, I built this agent, it does this thing within this very specific set of constraints and very specific set of inputs. But it's hard to like get them from I built this agent as a demo to I built an agent that can run reliably, consistently, and is going to take the right actions and reduce hallucination. And so you're kind of seeing this actually even with like a lot of the agents that have been launched by the major, model providers. Like, OpenAI's launched Deep Research. They've launched the browser agents that they created in Operator. And unfortunately, like, I mean, they're incredible tools. Like, if you use them properly, I absolutely love both tools. The downside is that like they go off the rails quite a bit, and it's very hard to constrain them and make sure that they're not hallucinating. And it's very easy for them to like still give you an output that looks correct but isn't correct. So it's tough. And this is why, like, we've been building DoubleO is like we're abstracting a lot of that like complexity of building away from folks. And we're making it so that, you basically just give a simple description of what you want to happen. And then we, using a string of other agents, go and extrapolate that into a full workflow that's going to be consistently reliable and, usable in quality. So, but the main skill is like understand prompt engineering and understand some basics about how to give an LLM like the ability to make a JSON call to a Python function. But in terms of the use cases, so there's a ton of different use cases that LLMs can or agents can solve for. So really, I always frame it as like anything that is a routine function that is operating the internet, right? So anything that can happen via email, documents, browsers, tools that are integrated into those agents, you can typically kind of action that task. And sorry, one sec, somebody's at my door. So in terms of like use cases that agents can tackle, I mean, I always frame it as like anything that can be done by, somebody under the age of 25 that's like, fairly junior and is operating the internet. So anything that requires, documents, browser interaction, email, using certain integrations, agents should be able to like take data, transform it, and then update tools and take action in them. So kind of like real life use cases, for example, would be, when you're talking about like sales and marketing, one of the really like obvious use cases is like lead management for sales teams. So, every time a new lead comes into your CRM, an agent can read that lead, it can interpret it, go research that lead and identify like a fully enriched profile of them, like, figure out what they do, what their likely priorities are, then take that, create notes, send an email to that person that shares a personalized agenda for the meeting that you're going to have with them, updates your CRM with those notes so your sales rep's ready for that call, and then goes and adds that all to the calendar for both people. So that's a simple example on the sales front, but then, there's a ton of use cases around content generation. So creating continuous SEO engines where you have agents that are researching topics, writing blog posts and publishing those blog posts to your website on a continuous basis. There's use cases around administrative stuff. So for example, document processing. So, if you talk about like the insurance industry, for example, there's a ton of document intake and parsing and processing and routing to the right places based on different criteria. And so, agents are capable of having every time a new document is submitted, they can review that document against certain criteria and then decide, is that document something or is that claim something that needs to be routed to the claims department, or does it need to be, discarded because it's not a relevant claim? So there's a lot of kind of document processing use cases. And then, some examples on like the product front would be synthesizing, large volumes of customer feedback. So, let's say you have all this customer feedback that's being collected across, your call transcripts with your sales team, your support tickets that customers are giving you direct feedback. You have internal feedback that's being captured in Slack messages, and being able to, analyze that, identify kind of key trends within that feedback and what features your customers requesting, and then actually turning that into a roadmap and pushing that into your road mapping tool. So the use cases for agents are like pretty limitless. It really just comes down to how well you're able to kind of articulate your own workflow and how well you're able to turn, that thing that you're doing on a day-to-day basis into a description of what has to happen for an AI, agent to be able to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me use the next question also to allow you to explain a little bit short or in brief what you and your company are actually working on and what you are offering to your customers. So the question is, why are AI agents any different or better than traditional SaaS software? And I hear this comparison a lot, and it's actually going so far that a lot of people predicting there will be literally billions of AI agents out there. And it may have been in your presentation or somebody else where they said, long live AI agents, SaaS is dead. It's a pretty bold prediction. And then related to that, it's also, the fear factor about typical AI fear factor. There's the human to AI agent interaction, then there's the AI to AI agent interaction. Tell us a little bit more and enlighten us. What's the difference between AI agents and the extremely well-established SaaS business industry out there?
Yeah, for sure. So when I think, depending on where you look, there's some stats like, for example, I think one analyst predicted that like by the end of this year, actually, like 60+% of SaaS businesses are going to be AI agents.
That's insane. Yeah.
And like I honestly believe it. I think that, when you look at like agents as a concept, I think that it will replace basically all software because at the end of the day, software all emerged and like traditional SaaS all emerged to automate people's workflows in various different ways, which is exactly what agents are capable of doing. I think the relevant component there though is the reason for agents replacing SaaS, and in some cases it's just going to be like agents are going to start powering more SaaS, and like you will still need SaaS tools to represent data in ways
Yeah.
you interact with, but they may swap their backend out for agentic workflows because the backend is a lot more flexible in that case, and it's able to do a lot more powerful things. Um, but the what I talk about in my Microsoft presentation around this was, there's this concept of I forget who coined it, but like this idea of like schematic software, and essentially SaaS, in order to take unstructured data that companies had and apply some structure or schema to it, so that it was then
Mhm.
usable and you could actually do things with it. You can, manipulate it and run workflows on top of it. You could represent it in dashboards, etc. And the reality is like that's great because it makes this unstructured data usable. But the downside is it forces companies to pigeonhole their workflow into the workflow of the SaaS tools that they adopt because they have to map to that schema that the SaaS tool is using. The beauty of what AI agents unlock is that they're essentially allowing for the company to map the agents to their own workflow. So they don't need to use some specific dedicated schema that the agents have come up with. They are able to use their existing unstructured data and then do the same kind of automation and take action on it in a lot more custom, flexible ways that really like match to what they want to happen and the outcomes they want to drive, which is why I think when people talk about like agents replacing SaaS, it's more so that they're replacing inflexibility in SaaS and they're allowing for companies to create a lot more custom solutions for their own workflows.
Is it then replacing it or enhancing it? Two different things.
I think it's a little both. I mean, depending on the SaaS use case, there are situations where it's going to entirely replace it. There are also situations where it's going to enhance it. So, like, I still fundamentally believe, most companies are going to need some kind of like system of record type tools, like a CRM for kind of core databases. So you're still going to CRM. In a CRM's case, like agents are enhancing the CRM. They're not necessarily replacing it. You're not going to use an agent to visualize your database and house your data, but you are going to use it to take action on that data. So you're going to use it to enrich the data in the CRM. You're going to use it to make the CRM more searchable and be able to query information out of it more easily. So that's where you see the enhancement. But then in some cases, you're going to actually like whole hog replace SaaS tools too. So there's, competitive intelligence tools like Clue and Cran out there where you're going to see those just completely get replaced by agents because there's no reason for you to use a expensive forced schema system like that to do something like researching competitors when you can do a lot more custom research using agents for your company.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what I gain and why should I reach out to you, your company? How would you help me? How could you help me? And what do you actually develop that is of value that I could use rather than, looking for people internally to build everything on my own if I actually have the capability to do so?
For sure. So, I mean, like, we typically don't, sell to tech teams that are, have engineering teams that they're trying to invest in building out, like, product architecture for their own products.
Bizzle.
Typically, the folks that we work with are non-technical teams that are trying to build, business workflow automation. And so, what our platform does is we essentially help non-technical teams to very, very easily build and orchestrate these agentic systems to complete complex workflows. And so, the reason to work with us is really like we've cracked a couple of things fairly uniquely. One is, we just make it reliable to run the workflows themselves, which is a very hard problem in and of itself. And we're also able to use context and knowledge about your company. So you can load in your own data, your own integrations, and we're able to operate using that data and using those integrations, complex tasks. But real magic to what we've unlocked is, we were kind of talking about earlier, it is still very difficult to create good agents and reliable agents, which is why you're seeing like a big explosion of tools that are, quote unquote agents, but really they're vertical workflows and use cases where they're targeting like a very specific, oh, I'm going to build a recruiting agent that goes out and recruits new employees and identify, sources and outreaches to them.
Yeah.
That's great, but you're still then locked into that agent's worldview of how recruiting should be done. In our case, we again allow you to build fully custom workflows. But the Mavic, what we've done is we've actually allowed you to just give a simple instruction, describe what you want to happen. Hey, I want you to go find all, like every day, wake up, go find the 30 people that match this profile and outreach to them. And we take that and we automatically, using, our own agents under the hood, extrapolate into a full workflow. So we build the workflow automatically using AI to build AI, which allows you to do crazy complex workflows very simply and then run and execute them reliably.
Okay. So what are the current capabilities then and the limitations of different subcategories for AI agents or of AI agents?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of limitations as long as you kind of know how to build these things. The one big one that I think I have found to be fairly consistent is a lot of people where their brain first goes to when they think about agents is doing like comprehensive research in the form of like list building. Whether it's building lists of candidates or whether it's building lists of prospects. Agents aren't great at that right now. They're good at doing comprehensive research to understand a topic, but they're not great at like building long lists and things because and a bunch of like, nuanced reasons for that, but they really struggle with that stuff. I think, in general though, like there's not a ton of limitations aside from making sure that the architecture that you're using is accounting for the limitations that exist under the hood in agents. So again, like how do you solve for I need a lot of context, but agents can only handle a certain amount of context input into them in any given action. I need, to be able to leverage multiple workflows that interoperate together and actually work in a system. How do you make sure that the different agent workflows that you've got built out are communicating with each other and are actually handing off properly? So that stuff's tough, but like otherwise, the world's kind of your oyster right now. That's the beauty of this space and like why I think everybody's so enthusiastic about it is you can kind of build just about anything you can imagine.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. So this I agree with you. So this is actually a good point because the AI agent topic has just exploded over the last 12 months or so, but it's still fairly new to the majority of the people out there, right? So where should somebody actually get started if they want to start applying AI agents in their business?
yeah,
What would be your advice to them?
so if you're a developer and you're trying to build this stuff in, into your product or you're a founder and you're trying to like build an agentic product, I really love some of the like AI coding tools like Cursor. I think they do a great job of like helping you to get your head around like how to build the function calls out. Good frameworks for building on, like for example, Swarm is a really good one to start with, depending on what you're building. Swarm or LangChain, I would typically, go between one of those two. Anthropic has a really good article about like, building agents and like kind of conceptually what agents are. But I think, if you're a non-technical team and you're not actually like doing development work to build in-house productized agents, I would honestly come to DoubleO and, all you do is go to doubleo.ai and sign up and like we'll build the first workflow for you. We also have, the ability for you to build your own using our whole generation system. So yeah, I think those are probably like the best places to start, depending on what you're trying to build. But it's fairly straightforward at this point. There's a ton of resources out there, and yeah, if anybody's curious, like I'm always happy to be a resource as well.
So, okay, thank you for that offer. I appreciate that. On that note, if there is a mid-sized company, industrial company, whatever, or even family owned, and they're not high tech people, conceptually speaking, where would they actually start in a company where, let's say, a CEO goes into a weekly meeting and says, I heard about this hype. I want to save some money. I heard this term AI agent. Where in the world can I actually apply it in my company in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, I always say like start with the most time consuming process that you have. Like, there you can start thinking about like what are specific use cases, but I always think that like with agents, because of the fact that they are so flexible, the best place to start is just look at your existing processes and say, map out your day and say, hey, what am I spending the majority of my time doing? What is my team spending the majority of their time doing? And then figure out like which of those things don't involve a lot of like human meeting, and then start with those and take that workflow, document it, write it out into like a step-by-step process. And then you should be able to take that step-by-step process and fairly easily go to a platform like DoubleO and dump that step-by-step process into it and have that workflow get generated for you. So, I think it always starts from like the difference is, unlike SaaS, where you're looking for like, okay, I have a use case and I'm going to look for providers that do this exact use case. It's more about flip that on its head and start from, I have a problem that I'm spending a lot of time on. I'm going to define my workflow for that problem and then go find a platform that will allow me to build that workflow.
Okay, super helpful. So looking forward, where do you see the agent space going in the future? How fast will it happen?
I mean, at this pace, it feels like it's going to happen in 3 months. Like I said, we're accelerating the rate at which this stuff is advancing, in big leaps and bounds. And like literally the last 2 weeks, I think were major steps forward with, the launch of O3 and some of the other new models and new agent frameworks. So I think, like we are not too far out from having, agents that are really able to behave truly like AI employees that have full context on your business and can actually go execute like really complex tasks with very limited direction. We're still far away from them being able to like figure out like what to work on. And I think that's where, you're always going to need people to be able to like direct these things. And I think the future of the way that a lot of workspaces are going to work is you're going to have humans who are going to be basically like the job function that they were in previously, where, they were working on, for example, let's say they're a marketer. They may writing a lot of their own content. They may have been, publishing a lot of their own campaigns. They're going to be, well, their job is now going to be like orchestrating a team of AI agents, which are going to do that work. And they're going to be really the one driving kind of the strategy and the workflow around it. And so I think you're going to see that future evolve pretty fast. And I vacillate back and forth between this. Some days I'm like, oh, like, because I know the limitations around LLMs, because I'm working in them every day. I'm like, we are years and years away from like anything even closely approximating AGI. And other days I'm in it and I'm like, ooh, this is 3 weeks around then. So, it's going to come fast, but it's going to be in like pockets, and you'll see like pockets of work starting to get like more and more, AI-ified. And I think then you're going to see, the broad base like AGI stuff. I think it's, no more than 5 to 7 years away. Like, I think we're pretty close to it, more so than I think we thought that we were 6 months ago.
So where do you see for your own company the most value and the biggest opportunity to serve potential customers? In what areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for us, our view, one of the big questions I've been getting a lot this week is like, where do we fit into a world where, OpenAI has their own like agentic tools, like for example, deep research. And, I think like the way that I view this is there's always going to be tools that are really good at like one-off stuff. Like, that's kind of what OpenAI has been launching, is these agents that, you can give a prompt input in chat, have it go execute a task.
Yep.
But businesses are ultimately like full, a whole bunch of different workflows, and all of those are running in parallel. And a lot of that stuff has to be kind of autonomous and interacting with each other. And so like where we're able to really add a ton of value to companies is the ability to kind of stitch these workflows together in a way where you have systems of agents that are able to actually work together, know more and more about your company as you go and as they work. And so you actually have a self-reinforcing system that ends up getting better and smarter and more intelligent about how it solves the problems within your specific company over time. And like I said, I think, our view is that the world is moving towards a world where everybody's going to be using fully custom software for most of their workflows internally in the form of agents. And our goal is, be the orchestration platform for that, where we can basically be the operating system that's powering all the different workflows that are happening inside the company.
Okay. So pretty much, I would say 50% of our audience who is listening here and the audience of Transatlantic AI Exchange, I would say 50% is international. And out of the international area, probably the majority is coming from Europe. The rest is domestic. Do you have any specific regions that you are serving? Are there limitations? Or if somebody listens here from Germany, Spain, Italy, whatsoever, um, how can they reach out to you, or do you have limitations?
No, I mean, the primary limitation is just our UI itself is, only written in English right now, so that's probably the only limitation, but even if you talk about, like, outside of the UI, the LLMs are able to operate in any language, and they can translate as they go, so it's very straightforward for you to actually use a tool that may or may not be so it's very straightforward for, anybody, even if they're not primarily English speakers, if they're able to kind of navigate the UI to use workflows in their own language. And, we're fully GDPR compliant. We are international. We have customers internationally. So there's not really any limitation on location. We tend to mostly work with like US, Canada, kind of like US time zone companies just because that's the people that are online when we're on. But, we work globally. So
Okay, very helpful. I really appreciate this session. I learned a lot, and this is obviously an interesting topic that we will keep an eye on further over the next 12, 24 months. I would love to reach out to you in a few months and see how the world has changed. Most likely, it most likely will, and you are part of it. So, Derek, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for sharing the information. I will put more details in the introductional part of this session to tell people how to get hold of you. And with that, thank you very much again. And I will talk to you soon and, see you soon.
likewise, yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.